But I'm here today to talk about the work we're doing to lower costs for American families and put rural America at the center of our efforts to build a future that's made in America. And that's not hyperbole. It's about being made in America. A lot of that has to do with this industry. I just had a chance to see the work you do here and turn more than 40 million bushels of local corn into 130 million gallons of ethanol a year. That's a lot of gallons. We want to see facilities like this all over the Midwest, and here's why. First, it supports farmers and the farm economy. You know, everybody thinks Delaware is a big industrial state and banking state and DuPont. We have a $4 billion industry. It's called agriculture in Delaware. And it's mostly, we have more chickens in Delaware, broiler chickens, than you have in the entire Midwest, I think. But all kidding aside, it is a big industry in Delaware. And my state, everybody thinks is an industrial state. It's a very rural state. The largest city outside of the main city of Wilmington, Delaware, is almost 150,000 people, is 20,000 people. It's a rural state. And so we understand about getting the rural communities engaged and being able to make it generally. And all that corn in the silos is from farmers within 60 miles of here. Knowing you have a buyer gives farmers something they don't often have: peace of mind, certitude about where their product can be sold and to get a fair price for it. Second, it creates good-paying jobs. It's estimated there are over 400,000 jobs directly and indirectly supported by this industry nationwide. There's a lot of people. That's a lot. And a lot of paychecks, and good, decent paychecks. Third, it reduces our reliance on foreign oil. By adding this fuel to our gasoline, 10% or 15%, even more, stretches the supply. And fourth, it gives you a choice at the pump. When you have a choice, you have competition. When you have competition, you have better prices. And in addition to all that, you get less harm to the environment, lower greenhouse gas emissions, and you get even byproducts like grain here, which goes into animal feed and which helps cattle producers and lowers their cost. This is an industry with a tremendous future. I've set a goal of zero carbon for aviation sector, for example, by 2050. I've spoken with the leading heads of all major airlines. It's going to require billions of gallons of sustainable aviation fuel. And you simply can't get to net zero by 2050 without biofuels. Aviation. Aviation is the case where you blend in a little bit of biofuel. It's where it's called drop-in, meaning 100% biofuel. You don't need to take my word for it. Take the word of the CEO of American Airlines, who said, "Sustainable aviation fuel is the cornerstone of our strategy," end of quote. And the CEO of United Airlines, who called the first biofuel-powered flight a significant milestone for our efforts to decarbonize our industry. To bring that future within reach, I proposed a sustainable aviation fuel tax that we brought together the government's agencies, aircraft manufacturers, airlines, fuel producers, airports, advanced, cleaner, and more sustainable fuels for American aviation. That's how we're going to get there. And we can. We're on the cusp of so many significant things that are going to happen in this country, not just in the fuel side, but in the next 10 years. Your children are going to see more change in the next 10 years than we've seen in the last 40 years. That's how rapidly technology is changing. So this industry has a role to play in a sustainable energy future. But I'm here today because homegrown biofuels have a role to play right now, as you work to get prices under control and reduce the costs for families. Look, I grew up in a family, not a joke, where if the price of a gallon of gasoline went up, it was a conversation at our kitchen table. It mattered. It mattered with my mom and dad. It made a difference. We felt it. Putin's invasion of Ukraine has driven up gas prices and food prices all over the world. The two largest grain producers in the world, Ukraine and Russia, are not doing what they usually do, so everything's going up. We saw today's inflation data. 70% of the increase in prices in March came from Putin's price hike in gasoline. We need to address this challenge with an urgency that demands. That's why I've called on Congress to move immediately to lower the cost of families' utility bills, prescription drug bills, and more, while lowering the deficit to reduce inflationary pressures. And that's what we've done. We lowered the deficit by $300 billion so far. And it's expected. So, folks, we can do these things without raising a penny in tax on anybody in this hall. Yeah. In this giant barn. Look, it's going to make a big difference for families. You know, and it's the most impactful way that Congress can address inflation right now. But even as we work with Congress, I'm not going to wait to take action to help American families. I'm doing everything within my power by executive orders to bring down the price and address the Putin price hike. In fact, we've already made progress since March inflation data was collected. Your family budget, your ability to fill up your tank, none of it should hinge on whether a dictator declares war and commits genocide in half a world away. To help deal with this Putin price hike, I've authorized the release of 1 million barrels per day for the next 6 months from our Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This is by far the largest release of our national reserve in history. It's a wartime bridge to increase oil supply as we work with U.S. oil producers to ramp up their production this year. Coordinated release with partners and allies around the world. I've spent hours and hours with my counterparts around the world trying to get them in on the deal. And shortly after I made the announcement, over 30 countries agreed to release another 60 million additional barrels onto the market. Over 240 million barrels over the next 6 months is the bridge to be able to make sure we are going to be able to keep prices down. This is the largest collective reserve release in history. Hundreds of hours of meetings with key allies, keeping them together, is paying off. Putin was counting on the division of NATO, the division of the European Union, the division of the world. Well, we spent a lot of time, but they're all following, every single one, including in Asia, South Korea, Japan, Australia, all of them. Nations coming together to help deny Putin the ability to weaponize his energy resources against American families in Europe and around the world. And by the way, we're also cutting off access to technology for him. Without American technology, look at the number of major American companies on their own, not at my urging. Over 600 of them, from Exxon to McDonald's, have left Russia. He has a burning tundra, literally. It's burning. The permafrost is burning. He's got a problem. And we're not going to let him cause that problem to spread to the rest of the world. And that helps stop the run-up of oil prices that have begun to bring prices down a little bit. As a result, countries acting together to release this reserve. And America should be seeing the savings. And we're not just learning and leaning on our reserves and our allies and partners to help bring down the gas prices and to power the nation. We're leaning on you, our farmers, our biofuel refiners. Today, I'm announcing that the environmental, and I don't think it's much of an announcement, it's already broken out pretty much the last 24 hours, but the Environmental Protection Agency is planning to issue an emergency waiver to allow E15 gasoline that uses more ethanol from homegrown crops to be sold across the United States this summer in order to increase fuel supply. And folks, I feel like, thank you. I feel like, as a minister, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. But here's what it means. E15 is about 10 cents a gallon cheaper than E10. And some gas stations offer an even bigger discount than that. But many of the gas stations that sell it here in Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania are required to stop selling in the summer. But with this waiver, on June 1, you're not going to show up at your local gas station and see a bag over the pump that has the cheapest gas. You're going to be able to keep filling up with E15. and it's going to solve a whole problem. But it's not going to solve all our problems, but it's going to help some people. And I'm committed to whatever I can to help. Even if it's an extra buck or two in the pockets that they fill up will make a difference in people's lives. And even though E15 is only available in a few thousand pumps today, we're investing more than $100 million to build biofuel infrastructure of the future. Things like blender pumps, the gas pumps that can handle higher blends of bioethanol and diesel fuel.